My wedding day collapsed when my mom told me not to expect anyone, then their beach photo appeared, and my one move turned their paradise into revenge. My name is Sophia. I am 32 years old. I was born into the Riley family, owners of one of the most successful luxury hotel chains on the East Coast. Riley Luxury Hotels started with one small boutique hotel in downtown Boston that my father Charles inherited from his father. Through aggressive expansion and shrewd business deals, my father turned that single property into a chain of 20 luxury hotels spanning from Maine to Florida. Our family name became synonymous with elegance and exclusivity. Growing up, I never wanted for anything material. We lived in a sprawling mansion in the most prestigious neighborhood in Boston, had vacation homes in the Hamptons and Aspen, and I attended the finest private schools. But what I craved most, parental approval and affection, remained frustratingly out of reach. From an early age, it was clear my parents had different expectations for me compared to my older brother Trevor. While I was held to impossibly high standards, Trevor, 5 years my senior, could do no wrong in their eyes. If I brought home straight A's, my father would nod curtly and ask why I had not pursued more advanced courses. When Trevor barely managed B's and C's, there were celebrations and expensive gifts. My mother Diana was no better. A former debutante who married into wealth, she seemed perpetually disappointed that I preferred business books to fashion magazines. She would sigh dramatically whenever I expressed interest in the hotel business instead of finding a suitable husband from our social circle. Despite this, I was determined to prove my worth. I graduated top of my class in high school, earned a business degree from Harvard, and went on to complete my MBA with specialization in hospitality management. All while Trevor partied his way through a mediocre college experience, taking 6 years to earn a basic business degree from a university my father had donated a building to. Upon graduation, I joined the family business, naively believing my education and dedication would finally earn me the recognition I deserved. Instead, I was given an entry-level position, while Trevor was immediately appointed as vice president of operations, despite having zero relevant experience. What became painfully obvious over the next few years was that while Trevor had the title, I was the one everyone came to when problems needed solving. There were 3 distinct instances where my quick thinking and business acumen saved the company from Trevor's catastrophic mistakes. The first happened during a major renovation of our flagship Boston property. Trevor had approved a contractor's bid that was suspiciously low without verifying their credentials or insurance. 2 days before construction was to begin, I discovered the company was a shell corporation with multiple complaints filed against them. I stayed up 3 nights straight negotiating with reputable contractors to take over the project, saving the company from potential lawsuits and reputational damage. The second time involved a pricing strategy Trevor implemented across all properties without consulting the revenue management team. He slashed luxury suite prices during peak season believing it would increase occupancy. Instead, it devalued our brand and actually decreased overall revenue. I created and presented a detailed analysis showing the negative impact and proposed a new dynamic pricing model that ultimately increased our revenue by 23%. The third and perhaps most significant incident occurred when Trevor nearly lost our newest Miami property to a zoning issue he had ignored. Multiple warnings had been sent to his office about compliance problems, all of which he had dismissed without reading. I found out about the situation just 72 hours before the city was set to shut us down. I flew to Miami immediately, spent 2 days and nights working with local officials, made the necessary adjustments to the property, and secured the permits just hours before the deadline. Each time my father acknowledged my contributions with reluctant passing comments while continuing to sing Trevor's praises in management meetings and family gatherings. It was exhausting and demoralizing to work twice as hard for half the recognition. But the family business was in my blood and deep down I still hoped to one day earn my rightful place. Then I met Eric. Unlike the privileged men in our social circle who had known nothing but wealth and entitlement, Eric Thompson came from a middle-class family in Philadelphia. He had put himself through college, working nights and weekends, built a successful career as an architectural engineer, and was refreshingly down-to-earth. We met when his firm was hired to consult on one of our hotel renovation projects. Our connection was immediate and profound. Eric saw me for who I truly was, valued my intelligence and determination, and supported my ambitions. For the first time in my life, I felt truly seen and appreciated. When we started dating, my family's reaction was predictably negative. My mother called him a fortune hunter, and my father dismissed him as not our kind. Trevor openly mocked Eric's more modest background at family dinners, making crude jokes about his public school education. Eric weathered it all with dignity, never stooping to their level or allowing their behavior to change how he treated them. His patience and integrity only made me love him more. After a year of dating, Eric proposed during a simple but romantic picnic in Boston Public Garden. No extravagant gestures, no audience, just the two of us, and a heartfelt promise to build a life together based on mutual respect and love. I said yes without hesitation. When I announced our engagement at the next family dinner, the reaction was explosive. My mother burst into tears, not of joy, but of disappointment. My father slammed his fist on the table, rattling the fine china and crystal, and declared he would not attend any wedding to that gold digger. Trevor laughed and asked if Eric had even been able to afford a real diamond. I showed them my ring, a beautiful but modest diamond that had belonged to Eric's grandmother. Rather than seeing its sentimental value, my mother scoffed and said she was embarrassed I would wear such a tiny stone. The evening devolved into a screaming match with accusations flying about how I was betraying the family by marrying beneath my station. I left that dinner determined that my wedding would proceed with or without their blessing. Eric deserved better than their judgment, and honestly so did I. Still, despite the hurt and anger, I could not quite let go of the hope that they would eventually come around. They were my family after all, and some childish part of me still yearned for their approval. Despite the disastrous engagement announcement, I still sent formal wedding invitations to every member of my family. Eric questioned whether this was setting myself up for more disappointment. But I insisted on giving them the chance to do the right thing. They are still my family, I told him. I have to at least try. The next 6 months were a whirlwind of wedding planning. We chose the Grand Summit Hotel for our venue, a beautiful historic property in downtown Boston that was not affiliated with my family's chain. This was a deliberate choice on my part, wanting our wedding to be truly ours, not an extension of the Riley business empire. Eric and I planned every detail together, from the menu featuring both of our favorite foods to the music that would play during different parts of the ceremony. We selected a color scheme of deep burgundy and gold for our October wedding, chose seasonal flowers, and hired a photographer known for capturing authentic unposed moments rather than stiff formal portraits. Throughout this process, my family's absence was conspicuous. My mother declined to go dress shopping with me, claiming a scheduling conflict with her tennis lesson. When I sent her photos of the 3 final dress contenders, her only response was a brief text, "The third one makes your shoulders look wide." I invited my parents to the menu tasting, hoping food might be neutral territory. My father said he had an important business meeting, though I later discovered he had been golfing that day. My mother initially agreed to come but canceled an hour before citing a migraine. Trevor and his wife Jessica were equally evasive, turning down every invitation to participate in wedding preparations with increasingly flimsy excuses. When I asked Trevor to be a groomsman, not even my brother, but simply part of the wedding party, he laughed and said, "I do not think Eric wants me there, sis. We are not exactly buddies." Even my extended family seemed to be keeping their distance. Aunt Laura, who had always been kinder to me than my parents, declined to attend my bridal shower, claiming a prior commitment. Uncle Robert, my father's brother and company co-partner, responded to the wedding invitation with a non-committal, "We will try our best to make it." Despite these disappointments, I clung to the hope that when the actual day arrived, family obligation and public appearances would compel them to attend. My parents were nothing if not concerned with how things looked to others in their social circle. Surely, they would not want to explain their absence from their only daughter's wedding to their country club friends. 2 weeks before the wedding, I noticed my family members had become unusually difficult to reach. Calls went straight to voicemail. Texts received delayed one-word responses. Emails about last-minute wedding details went unanswered. During our final venue walkthrough, the wedding coordinator asked about the family seating arrangements, and I felt a knot form in my stomach as I realized I was not entirely confident my family would show up. Still, I reserved the entire front row on my side of the aisle, holding on to a shred of optimism. 1 week before the wedding, I stopped by my parents' house unannounced, hoping to catch them at home. The housekeeper informed me they were not available, but seemed uncomfortable when I asked where they had gone. She eventually admitted they had left that morning with several suitcases, but had not shared their destination with the staff. My calls to Trevor went straight to voicemail. His wife Jessica posted on social media about a much-needed break from Boston, but did not specify where they were headed. A cold feeling of dread began to settle over me, but I pushed it aside, focusing instead on final wedding preparations. The night before our wedding, I made one last attempt to reach my family. I called every number, sent heartfelt messages expressing how much their presence would mean to me tomorrow. No responses came. As I tried to sleep in the hotel room I had booked for my last night as a single woman, anxiety kept me awake. My best friend and maid of honor Amy tried to reassure me. Even if they do not show, Sophia, tomorrow is about you and Eric. Focus on that love, not their absence. I nodded, grateful for her support, but inside I was a churning mass of emotions. The hurt of potential abandonment on what should be the happiest day of my life warred with anger at their callousness. Underneath it all was a current of fear that perhaps they were right, that I was making a mistake by choosing a path different from what they had planned for me. Morning arrived after a restless night, bringing with it the day I had been dreaming of and dreading in equal measure. The morning of my wedding day dawned bright and clear, a perfect October day with crisp air and vibrant fall foliage visible through the hotel room windows. For a few blissful moments after waking, I forgot about my family concerns and simply felt excitement about marrying Eric. My maid of honor, Amy, arrived at 7:30 with coffee and pastries, followed shortly by the hairstylist and makeup artist. The bridal suite filled with the cheerful bustle of wedding day preparations. My other bridesmaids, all friends from college and work, arrived one by one, bringing gifts, champagne, and much-needed moral support. "Has anyone from your family called?" Amy asked quietly while the makeup artist was setting up. I checked my phone. "Nothing yet," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, but it is still early. By 10 o'clock, my hair was styled in soft waves with small white flowers woven through, and my makeup was complete, natural-looking, but designed to last through tears and kisses. The photographer arrived to capture getting-ready moments, and I forced myself to smile as if everything was perfect. At 11:15, as I was stepping into my wedding dress, a vintage-inspired lace gown with delicate beading, my phone chimed with a message. My heart leapt with hope as I saw my mother's name on the screen. That hope crashed as I read her message, "Don't expect anyone to show." 6 words, no explanation, no apology, just a cold statement delivered hours before I was supposed to walk down the aisle. My hand shook so badly I nearly dropped the phone. The room went silent as my bridesmaids noticed my expression. "Sophia, what is it?" Amy took the phone from my trembling hands and read the message. Her face flushed with anger. "That is unbelievable. How could she?" I felt numb, unable to process the deliberate cruelty of the timing. After months of evasiveness, my mother had chosen this moment, when I was literally in my wedding dress, to confirm my worst fears. "I need to try calling them," I said, my voice sounding distant even to my own ears. One by one, I called every family member. My father's phone went straight to voicemail. So did Trevor's, my aunts, uncles, cousins, all unavailable. It was as if they had coordinated their disappearance. "Maybe there was an emergency," suggested one of my bridesmaids gently. But I knew better. This was too organized, too complete to be coincidental. With a growing sense of dread, I opened Instagram, where my family members were usually active. And there it was, posted 20 minutes earlier by my cousin Melissa, who had always been quick to share family gatherings on social media. A group photo of my entire family on a pristine white sand beach. My parents front and center smiling broadly. Trevor and Jessica beside them. All my aunts, uncles, cousins arranged around them. Cocktails in hand, sunglasses on, not a care in the world. The location tag read, "Private Beach, Maui, Hawaii." The caption, "Finally, together." Annual Riley family vacation has officially begun. #blessed #family time. The timestamp showed it had been posted at 11 o'clock a.m. Eastern Time, which meant they had taken this photo around 5 or 6 in the morning Hawaii time. They had deliberately gotten up at dawn to take this photo and post it before my wedding. I zoomed in on their smiling faces, searching for any sign of regret or conflict. There was none. They looked happier than I had seen them in years, genuinely delighted to be together without me on my wedding day. My vision blurred with tears. The physical pain in my chest was so intense I thought I might be having a heart attack. This was not just absence. This was not just missing my wedding. This was a deliberate, coordinated act designed to hurt me as deeply as possible. Through my tears, I noticed something else in the photo's background. A banner partially visible on a nearby cabana. I zoomed in further and made out the words Riley Family Retreat 2023. This had been planned for months, deliberately scheduled to coincide with my wedding day. With shaking fingers, I typed a reply to the Instagram post, perfect timing. Then I turned to Amy and my bridesmaids who were watching me with expressions ranging from shock to outrage to pity. The ceremony starts in an hour, I said, surprised by the steadiness in my voice. We should finish getting ready. Are you sure you want to go through with this today? Amy asked gently. No one would blame you if you wanted to postpone. I looked at my reflection in the mirror, at the bride I had become despite my family's absence. Absolutely. I am marrying the man I love today. Their absence just confirms I am making the right choice. In that moment, something hardened inside me. The last lingering hope that my family might eventually accept my choices and support my happiness died. In its place grew a cold clarity about who they truly were and what I needed to do next. The hour before the ceremony passed in a blur of final preparations. My bridesmaids rallied around me with fierce loyalty, each one promising to make this day special despite my family's betrayal. The wedding coordinator, who had been informed of the situation, handled the last-minute seating adjustments with professional discretion. As I stood at the entrance to the ceremony space, I could see the rows of empty seats where my family should have been. Friends had spread out to make the absence less obvious, but nothing could truly hide the stark reality that not a single blood relative had come to witness my marriage. The traditional wedding march began to play, and all the guests rose and turned to watch my entrance. For a moment, I faltered. In all my wedding dreams, my father had been beside me, ready to walk me down the aisle. Now I stood alone. Then I saw Eric waiting at the altar, his eyes finding mine with such love and concern that my momentary hesitation vanished. I began walking, head held high, alone. Yes, but moving toward the family I was choosing to create. Halfway down the aisle, Amy's father stepped out from his seat and offered me his arm. May I have the honor? He whispered. I accepted gratefully, this simple act of kindness nearly bringing me to tears again. The ceremony itself was beautiful in its simplicity. Eric and I had written our own vows, promises not just of love, but of partnership, respect, and unwavering support. As we exchanged rings, I felt a weight lifting. The family that had refused to witness this moment no longer held power over my happiness. During the reception, many guests tactfully avoided mentioning my family's absence, though I caught whispers and concerned glances. When it came time for speeches, I knew I had to address the elephant in the room. I took the microphone, looked out at the gathered friends who had become my true family, and spoke from the heart. Thank you all for being here today to celebrate with Eric and me. Your presence means more than you can possibly know. Love is a choice we make every day, and today each of you chose to support our love story. That is what family truly means, and I am grateful to call you mine. Not a single mention of those who chose not to attend, but everyone understood. The reception continued with dinner, dancing, and all the traditional celebrations. I was determined to create joyful memories despite the shadow my biological family had tried to cast over the day. Later that night, as Eric and I returned to our hotel suite, the emotional armor I had maintained throughout the day finally cracked. I sank onto the edge of the bed, still in my wedding dress, and let the tears come. Eric sat beside me, holding my hand, giving me the space to feel everything I had suppressed during our wedding day. I am so sorry they did this to you, he said softly when my sobs had quieted. You deserved better. I wiped my eyes and looked at him. This man who had stood by me despite my family's disdain, who had never once suggested I cut ties with them, even when they treated him terribly. I am done, I said, my voice gaining strength with each word. Done hoping they will change. Done making excuses for their behavior. Done pretending we are a normal family with normal disagreements. Eric nodded, listening intently. They crossed a line today that cannot be uncrossed, I continued. And now I need to protect myself from them permanently. Whatever you decide, I am with you, Eric promised. What are you thinking? I stood up and began carefully removing my wedding dress, symbolic of shedding the identity they had tried to force upon me for so many years. The Riley Luxury Hotels charter lists me as a board member and partial owner, even though they have always minimized my actual control, I explained. They needed my name on the paperwork for tax and inheritance purposes, but they never thought I would actually exercise those rights. Eric's eyes widened as he began to understand where I was heading. My name is on most of the corporate accounts as well. Another legal formality they never expected me to use, I continued. Tonight, I am going to pull my name off the business charter and freeze every corporate expense account I have access to. That is a big step, Sophia, Eric said carefully. Are you sure? More sure than I have ever been about anything, I replied. They chose to show me exactly where I stand with them. Now I will show them exactly what that decision will cost. I changed into comfortable clothes and opened my laptop. Years of being underestimated had its advantages. They had never bothered to restrict my access to the company's financial and legal systems, assuming I would not dare act against family interests. That night, while my family continued their Hawaiian vacation, I sent a series of emails to the company's legal department, removing myself from the charter. I contacted the banks where the Riley corporate accounts were held, and using my authorized access, placed temporary freezes on the expense accounts. I was careful to effect only the discretionary spending accounts, not payroll or operations that would impact employees. This was between me and my family, not the innocent staff who depended on the hotels for their livelihood. As dawn broke on the first day of my marriage, I finally went to bed exhausted but oddly at peace. The hurt was still there, a wound that would take time to heal, but I had taken back control in a way my family never anticipated. Do you think they will realize what happened yet? Eric asked as we curled up together. They will soon, I said, closing my eyes. Very soon. The morning after our wedding, instead of leaving for a lavish honeymoon as originally planned, Eric and I decided to stay local. We rescheduled our trip to Italy for later in the year and instead booked a cozy cabin in the Berkshires for a brief 3-day getaway close enough to return quickly if necessary. Before leaving, I scheduled an urgent meeting with Jonathan Reed, a lawyer who had helped me with personal matters in the past and had no connection to my family's legal team. I explained the situation and asked him to review the actions I had taken to ensure everything was legally sound. What you have done is within your rights as a named partner and account holder, Jonathan confirmed after reviewing the documents. Removing yourself from the charter is straightforward. The account freezes are temporary by nature and affect only non-essential corporate spending. There is nothing illegal about what you have done, though I expect your family will be furious. That is exactly what I am counting on, I replied. Jonathan recommended I also engage a forensic accountant to document the full extent of my contributions to the company over the years, as well as any instances where Trevor or my father had made decisions that I had later corrected or improved. This documentation would be crucial if they attempted to claim I had acted maliciously or without cause. Think of it as insurance, he advised. If they choose to pursue this legally, you will have evidence that your actions were a reasonable response to years of being minimized despite your essential contributions to the company's success. I agreed and authorized him to hire Margaret Chen, a respected forensic accountant with experience in family business disputes. She would begin work immediately compiling financial records, email exchanges, meeting minutes, and other evidence of my role in the company. By late afternoon, Eric and I were on our way to the Berkshires. My phone deliberately set to do not disturb mode. I was not ready to hear whatever vitriol my family would unleash when they discovered what I had done. The cabin was exactly what we needed, a quiet, peaceful retreat surrounded by autumn foliage with a stone fireplace and no neighbors for miles. For 2 days, we hiked, cooked meals together, sat by the fire reading, and began to heal from the wedding day trauma. On the 3rd day, curiosity got the better of me, and I checked my email. There were dozens of messages from family members, each more outraged than the last. The timestamps showed a progression that told the story clearly. The first emails from early morning Hawaii time were confused inquiries about why certain credit cards were being declined at their resort. By midday, the tone had shifted to anger as they realized all their corporate cards and accounts had been frozen. By evening, as communication with the company's legal department confirmed I had removed myself from the charter, the messages became threatening. My father's email was particularly vicious. "Your childish tantrum will cost you everything. You can consider yourself cut off completely. Don't bother coming back to the company ever." My mother's message was shorter, but equally biting. "I always knew you would choose that man over your family. You've made your bed, now lie in it." Trevor's email contained crude language and threats to make you regret this stunt for the rest of your life. What none of them seemed to understand was that their threats held no power over me anymore. I had already accepted the loss of my family. Their messages only confirmed I had made the right decision. I also had several missed calls from employees at the company, people I had worked with closely over the years. I returned one call to Maria, the chief financial officer who had always treated me with respect. "It is chaos here, Sophia," she said when I reached her. "Your father is on a rampage threatening to fire anyone who had knowledge of your access levels. Trevor is making wild accusations about corporate espionage. No one understands what triggered this." "They know exactly what triggered this," I replied calmly. "They chose to boycott my wedding and publicly flaunt their absence. Actions have consequences." "For what it is worth," Maria said quietly, "many of us wanted to attend your wedding, but were told explicitly by your father that anyone who did would be terminated immediately. I should have stood up to him, and I am sorry I did not." This new information stung. I had not considered that my family would actively prevent company employees from attending, another layer to their cruelty. "It is not your fault," I assured her. "But you might want to update your resume. I doubt the company culture will improve anytime soon." Eric and I returned to our condo in Boston the next day. We had a quiet dinner and discussed next steps. While I had no interest in returning to the family business, I needed to decide how to resolve the financial situation. Keeping the accounts frozen indefinitely would harm innocent employees and eventually the business itself. "What do you want the outcome to be?" Eric asked as we sat on our balcony watching the city lights. "Acknowledgement," I said after some thought. "Not an empty apology, but real recognition of what they did and how they have treated me for years. And I want it documented so they cannot gaslight me later and claim it never happened." We decided I would give them 1 week to stew in the consequences of their actions before engaging further. In that time, I would work with Jonathan and Margaret to prepare a comprehensive proposal for resolution. The proposal would include conditions for unfreezing the accounts, a formal acknowledgement of my contributions to the company, financial compensation for ideas and strategies they had profited from while giving Trevor credit, and a legally binding agreement that they would not interfere in my future business ventures. As we finalized these plans, I knew confrontation was inevitable. My family would not surrender easily, especially my father, whose pride was legendary. But for the first time in my life, I was not afraid to face them on my own terms. By the end of the week, Margaret had compiled an impressive dossier documenting dozens of instances where my work had directly saved or earned the company millions of dollars. Jonathan had drafted the legal agreement, and I had prepared myself emotionally for what would undoubtedly be an ugly confrontation. I did not have to wait long. Exactly 1 week after our return from the Berkshires, the doorbell rang repeatedly, followed by loud, angry pounding on our front door. The aggressive pounding continued as I approached the door. Through the peephole, I could see my father standing in the hallway, his face flushed deep red with anger. Behind him stood my mother, her arms crossed tightly over her chest, and Trevor, pacing back and forth like a caged animal. I took a deep breath, smoothed my expression into one of calm indifference, and opened the door. With deliberate casualness, I raised my coffee mug to my lips and took a slow sip before speaking. Well, this is a surprise. Did you enjoy Maui? My father pushed past me into the apartment, ignoring my question entirely. What the hell do you think you are doing? He bellowed. Do you have any idea the damage you have caused? My mother and Trevor followed him in, both glaring at me with undisguised hostility. Eric emerged from our home office, alerted by the commotion, and stood quietly beside me in a show of support. I assume you are referring to the account freezes and my removal from the company charter, I said calmly. Actions that were entirely within my legal rights as a named partner. Legal rights? My father's voice rose even higher. You have crippled operations. Hotels cannot process payments. Vendors are not being paid. The executive team cannot access travel funds. All because you had some petty grievance about your wedding. I set my coffee down and met his gaze directly. Petty grievance? You and the entire family deliberately scheduled a vacation to coincide with my wedding day. You posted photos specifically timed to hurt me at my most vulnerable moment. And you call that a petty grievance? We take the same family trip every year, my mother interjected weakly. Really? Because according to the resort's website, this was the inaugural Riley family retreat. And the booking was made 4 months ago, 2 weeks after I sent out save-the-date cards for my wedding. My mother had the grace to look slightly uncomfortable, but Trevor jumped in with his usual aggression. So what if we did? It is not like your wedding to this nobody was important to the family. You chose him over us. What did you expect? Eric stiffened beside me, but remained silent, allowing me to handle the confrontation as we had discussed. What I expected was basic human decency, I replied. But clearly that was too much to ask from the Riley family. So instead, I did what you all taught me to do. Used every available resource to protect my interests. My father snorted derisively. And what exactly are your interests? You have cut yourself off from the family fortune, from your position in the company, from your inheritance. For what? To make some dramatic point, I walked to the dining table where I had placed 3 thick folders, each labeled with one of their names. I handed them out one by one. These contain detailed documentation of my contributions to Riley Luxury Hotels over the past 5 years. Specifically, instances where I directly saved the company from financial or legal disaster, most often cleaning up messes created by Trevor. Trevor flipped open his folder and his face paled as he scanned the contents. My father was slower to look, his jaw clenched in stubborn resistance. This first section, I continued, pointing to my father's folder, contains emails and meeting minutes showing how my marketing strategy for the Miami property increased revenue by 30% year over year despite you giving Trevor credit at the board meeting. I turned to my mother next. Your folder includes documentation of the 3 occasions when I personally secured permits and approvals that saved hotel openings after Trevor failed to file the proper paperwork. Events you conveniently forgot when planning the family Christmas card that praised Trevor's leadership in our expansion efforts. The room fell silent as they flipped through the meticulously organized evidence. 5 years of slights, stolen credit, contributions minimized, all laid bare in black and white. This proves nothing, my father finally said, though his voice lacked its usual confidence. It proves everything, I countered, and it is only a small sample. My lawyer has the complete files, including financial analysis showing that projects under my direct management outperformed Trevor's by an average of 42%. There is also documentation of 3 specific incidents where Trevor's decisions would have resulted in litigation had I not intervened. Trevor slammed his folder shut. This is ridiculous. You cannot possibly think these little reports will hold up if we take this to court. I welcome a court case, I said with genuine pleasure. Public disclosure of these documents would make fascinating reading for our competitors, investors, and the business press. How do you think the board will react when they learn how close Trevor came to losing the Chicago property due to his negligence? My father's expression shifted from anger to calculation, the businessman in him finally assessing the real threat I posed. "What do you want?" he asked flatly. "An acknowledgement, recognition of my contributions, and a formal agreement that you will not interfere in my future business ventures," my mother asked. "When will you unfreeze the accounts?" "When we have a signed agreement. My lawyer has prepared the paperwork. It is quite straightforward. You acknowledge my role in the company's success. Agree to a fair financial settlement for ideas and strategies you profited from while giving others credit, and commit to non-interference in my future career." "This is extortion," Trevor sputtered. "This is business," I corrected him. "Something you never really understood. I am simply negotiating from a position of strength, exactly as Dad taught me to do." My father's eyes narrowed at having his own tactics used against him. "And if we refuse?" "Then the accounts remain frozen while we proceed to litigation. Every aspect of the company's operations and family dynamics becomes public record. Every email, every meeting minute, every financial report. I have nothing to lose, and you have everything to hide." The three of them exchanged glances, silently communicating in that way families do. My father seemed to reach a decision. "I need to review this with our lawyers." "Of course," I said reasonably, "they can contact Jonathan Reed. His information is in the folders. But understand this, the longer this drags on, the more it will cost you both financially and reputationally." My mother, who had been uncharacteristically quiet, finally spoke up. "Was your wedding at least nice?" she asked, an awkward attempt at reconciliation. "It was beautiful," I replied coolly. "Filled with people who actually care about my happiness." She flinched as if I had slapped her. "You should go now," Eric said, speaking for the first time since their arrival. "Sophia has said what she needed to say, and you have the information you requested." "You," my father turned his anger toward Eric. "This is all because of you. She was a beautiful daughter until you poisoned her against us." I laughed, the sound sharp and without humor. "Eric has spent 2 years encouraging me to repair my relationship with you. He defended you when you did not deserve it. If anyone poisoned our family relationship, it was you, with your constant favoritism and dismissal of my contributions." My father looked as if he might argue further, but something in my expression stopped him. Perhaps he finally recognized the steel in my spine, the resolve that would not bend to his will any longer. "This is not over," Trevor threatened as they moved toward the door. "You are right about that," I agreed. "But how it ends is now entirely up to you." As the door closed behind them, Eric wrapped his arms around me. I leaned into his embrace, exhausted, but triumphant. "You were magnificent," he whispered. I was terrified, I admitted, but also free. For the first time in my life, completely free of their power over me. We both knew the battle was not truly over. My family would consult their lawyers, look for loopholes, try to find ways to regain the upper hand. But the dynamic had fundamentally changed. I had shown them exactly what I was capable of, and they would never underestimate me again. 3 days after the confrontation in our condo, Jonathan called to inform me that my family's legal team had reached out. They wanted to negotiate. After several rounds of back and forth with attempts to water down the agreement at every turn, they finally conceded to my terms with only minor adjustments. The signed documents arrived by courier a week later. As promised, I immediately initiated the process to unfreeze the corporate accounts. I had no interest in causing collateral damage to employees or vendors who depended on the Riley business for their livelihoods. My father included a terse personal note with the documents: "I still think you are making a mistake. The door remains open if you come to your senses." Typical Charles Riley, unable to admit wrongdoing even when legally forced to acknowledge it. I did not respond. With that chapter closed, Eric and I focused on building our new life together. I declined several attractive job offers from competing hotel chains, not wanting to appear vindictive by joining a direct competitor to the family business. Instead, I decided to forge my own path entirely. Using my settlement money and industry connections, I established Thompson Riley Consulting, specializing in boutique and independent hotel management. Eric continued his architectural engineering work, but collaborated with me on projects when appropriate. Within 6 months, We had secured contracts with 5 independent hotels struggling to compete with larger chains, helping them develop unique brand identities and optimize their operations. The healing process was neither quick nor linear. There were days when the pain of my family's betrayal felt as fresh as it had on my wedding day. I would find myself overwhelmed by grief for the relationship we never had and now never would. On those days, Eric would gently remind me that I had done everything possible to earn their love and respect, and their failure to give it was their loss, not mine. I began seeing a therapist who specialized in family trauma, working through the complex emotions of simultaneously mourning and breaking free from toxic family dynamics. The hardest part, I told her during one session, is accepting that they will never be the family I needed them to be. That no matter what I achieve, it will never be enough to make them truly see me. That acceptance is actually the beginning of freedom, she replied. When we stop expecting people to be different than they have consistently shown themselves to be, we can make choices based on reality rather than hope. Those words became a touchstone for me in the months that followed. I stopped checking my family's social media accounts, no longer torturing myself with glimpses of gatherings I wasn't invited to. I declined the obligatory holiday invitation that arrived in November, sending a polite but firm email explaining that I needed more time and space before considering family events. My mother made one attempt at reconciliation, inviting me to lunch 3 months after the wedding. I agreed, curious about her intentions. The meeting was awkward, filled with superficial conversation about the weather and mutual acquaintances. When I finally asked why she had reached out, her answer was revealing. "People are asking questions about why you were not at the last charity gala," she admitted. "It looks bad for the family image." Not because she missed me, not because she regretted her actions, but because my absence was causing gossip. I finished my coffee, thanked her for reaching out, and left without committing to further contact. Eric and I eventually took our delayed honeymoon to Italy, spending 3 glorious weeks exploring Venice, Florence, and the Amalfi Coast. Away from Boston and all its associations, I found moments of pure joy, uncomplicated by family baggage. We talked about starting our own family someday, both committed to breaking the cycle of conditional love and favoritism that had damaged me so deeply. Our business continued to thrive. Word spread in the industry about our success with independent properties, and our client list grew steadily. I discovered I had a genuine talent for hospitality consulting, perhaps even more than for direct management. The flexibility of consulting work also allowed Eric and I to travel together frequently, strengthening our partnership in both personal and professional realms. 1 year after our wedding, we hosted a vow renewal ceremony, smaller and more intimate than our wedding had been. We invited only those who had truly supported our relationship from the beginning. The contrast between this joyful gathering of genuine well-wishers and the tension that had surrounded our wedding was striking. That evening, as we celebrated with our chosen family of friends, I reflected on how much had changed in a single year. The woman who had once desperately sought her parents' approval now stood confident in her own worth. The relationship that my family had dismissed as inappropriate had proven more solid and nurturing than any I had known before. The greatest lesson I learned through this painful journey was about the true nature of family. Blood relation is an accident of birth. But real family is built through consistent love, respect, and support. My parents and brothers shared my DNA, but had never truly acted as family. Eric and our close friends who celebrated our joys and supported us through difficulties without condition or expectation were my true family. I also learned the power of standing firm in your own truth. For years, I had allowed my family to minimize my contributions and dismiss my feelings, always hoping that just a little more achievement, a little more accommodation on my part would finally earn their respect. It was only when I stopped seeking their approval and instead demanded acknowledgement of my worth that the dynamic shifted. Setting boundaries is not selfish. Requiring respect is not unreasonable. And walking away from people who consistently hurt you, even family, is sometimes the healthiest choice you can make. Today, I no longer define myself as the daughter my parents did not value properly. I am Sophia Thompson Riley, successful business owner, loving wife, and a woman who finally understood that the approval she sought from others had always existed within herself.